You see what I have to deal with? This is why we drink beer on this podcast. It's all really a front, just so I can tolerate him while we talk about things. Welcome to the Charlotte Buzz, where we drink beer from local breweries while telling stories about the neighborhoods they're from. I'm Chrissy, and this is Drew.
And today, we are drinking two beers
Heyo.
from Far Mill Brewing in Harrisburg.
Harrisburg always confuses me because I come from Pennsylvania, and that's our state capital, and so every time I hear it, I have to, check myself.
Yeah, that one's a little bit bigger.
A little bit. But nonetheless.
Yeah. So, beer one is Tropical Day Trip.
Shabam.
It is an IPA.
Hey.
5.4%. East Coast style. Brewed with Centennial, Simcoe, and finished with Comet, Eldorado, and Azacca hops, resulting in a citrus and mango-like finish.
Hey, I like mango.
So a bunch of hops in there.
I'm a fan.
5 total. Brewed with 2, finished with 3.
That'll drink.
Oh, yeah?
I'm a fan. I mean, and we have a lot to say about this brewery in particular. They, I think, currently have 2 IPAs on tap. Mm-hmm. And choosing one was quite difficult. So we kind of let them do it for us. And by kind of, I mean we did.
Yeah.
But.
And then... So you can go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this one. I'm going to let you taste it. And then we can, I think, pour the second one.
Okay.
So we keep our, commentary.
Okay.
For the right beer. It'll drink. I think it's very good. It's crisp. It's fruity, but not it's like how it said, that kind of dry mango finish. Mm-hmm. That's very much what it is. You get a little bit of that fruity flavor, but not super overpowering, not too sweet, not... Mm-hmm. You have a sip of that and tell me what you think. Has a very good aftertaste. I think a lot of beers kind of leave just a weird sour taste on your tongue sometimes. I think the aftertaste is also in keeping and refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not as bitter as I would imagine.
Agreed.
It's pretty
It's got just enough kick, but no, not really. Mm-mm.
I believe I think it was for this beer. Kevin said it was very crushable.
I think it was, yes.
So 5.4% for an IPA, so a little on the low side.
And there's a reason, why they called it Tropical Day Trip. That they said it was a very good beach beer or a race beer, that kind of thing that you can. It doesn't feel too heavy, that you can kind of sit there out in the sun and not feel kind of bogged down by it.
But yeah, definitely it'll drink. Mm-hmm. Not as hazy as other hazies.
Sure.
Because this is a hazy too, right? Or is the other one more of a...
I think they both might have been hazies, yeah.
But pretty good.
I'm a fan. I've tried several of their beers now. Mm-hmm. And again, I know I have a certain preferred flavor profile.
Yeah, the two...
But none of the beers are bad.
Yeah. The 2 IPAs you were a fan of. The
they
other
were
one
great.
was called Far From Hazy.
Ooh, yeah, I believe so.
And it was PHARR.
What?
Like Far Mill.
Nuh-uh.
You get it?
I get it. All right, so.
You can pour it for me.
I'll pour it for you.
I mean, you're the designated pourer. So.
Someone's got to be.
So this is Midnight Cravings.
I'm just here to take the blame when anything touches the table. That's what.
Midnight Cravings is a stout, 6.5%.
I literally, if you're not watching this on YouTube, I poured this can, and obviously I'm very used to pouring IPAs in this podcast space.
You were confused.
It literally just felt like I was pouring a cold brew. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
It's got that real rich, deep color. Do I get to taste it first, even though
Sure,
you're...
go ahead.
Hey, you.
Combination of, well, I'll let you handle. Let's see what you say first, because it's all
It definitely
just about
has that, like,
flavors.
alcohol whiff. Like, I got it to my nose, and I was like, oh, that. Okay.
This was the first beer of theirs that I tried when we went and picked up the beer for Seaboard at Temple Mojo. I had a pint of this at Temple Mojo.
Okay, so my very first impressions on this, I also tasted it there. Thought it was, again, not my flavor profile, but good. Right now, in this moment, brought it to my face, and I got a whiff of almost like rubbing alcohol, like that kind of like sort of harsh alcohol smell. But the minute it touches your tongue, it's got that like thicker, not creamy, but just like a more smooth, delicate taste. It tastes a little chocolatey. I want to say coffee, but that might just be the appearance of it that my brain automatically goes there. But I feel like it's got a hint of coffee flavor, pretty chocolatey. It's rich, but not overpoweringly rich. I would not call this beach or race day crushable, but it's still very good flavors.
It's for, midnight cravings. Hence the name.
Maybe some vanilla? Like cooking vanilla type of flavor.
Vanilla extract.
Yes.
Well, it is a combination of chocolate, coconuts, and vanilla.
Hey!
So good job, you.
Hey! I guess I could see coconut. It's definitely not the dominant flavor there, but
Yeah, I get a little bit of that scent, but
yeah,
you may have.
I think it was
tricked
also the
me
like
into it.
first whiff from it being fresh from the can, but
I'm kind of into stouts right now. So
I will say is, for whatever reason, beyond IPAs, my next like tolerable level of beers are the kind of porter stouts, thicker, darker.
So the two least liked
Yeah.
kinds are your favorite.
Yep.
I
mean,
I guess
IPAs
IPAs aren't least liked,
but you have to typically take some time to get there.
yeah. You can't go from the Studweiser to an IPA.
Nope.
You'd be like, that ain't beer. And then we'll be like, well, that's water.
Yep. So yeah, again, not exactly my preferred flavor profile, but I could drink that for sure.
Yes, and I am going to.
I'm gonna
So.
crush. I'm gonna crush this one.
Yeah.
Crushable faux show. But I may still sip beers from time to time.
Doubt it.
So the reason we have two from this brewery, one, we're learning, we're growing. I need to open up. I get it. Loosen the reins a bit. But two is this brewery in particular, we got a chance to do something pretty special and sit down with the owners and get sort of a face-to-face interview and do a lot more diving in to their story, and got to the end of that conversation and said, okay, what should we drink? And so that's what we brought home. And we were happy to do so. Because like I said, is for all the beers that we have tried of theirs, maybe not on my preference, but I've not had one that I would say is not good.
Yeah, true.
So,
And plus, it came in a crowler, and we needed more than one. So,
Yeah.
might as well go
absolutely.
with two. So that's what we did. Did I say this was 6.5%?
I'm not sure, but that's more than
That's
my
what
IPA.
it is. Yep.
Mine's 5.4.
Yes.
Yep. Cool.
Yep.
Well, all right. Well, on that note, I can talk more about the brewery. Like I said, we did get a chance to sit down with them. So please, by all means, interrupt me and just add to what we're going to talk about. But the owners are
Austin.
I always want to call him Alster. I don't know why, homie. I don't know why. Austin and Kevin. And we actually had met them a year ago,
Maybe
plus.
more than that, yeah. I don't
So,
even know.
You may want to skip back to our Matthews and Seaboard episode for a little bit of background in the middle of all the unfortunate ranting that went on that episode. But you'll hear us talk about how there was a brewery that tried to come into the Matthews area a while back and was shut down pretty hard by the Historical Society. And, you know, year 2+ later, enter Far Mill. So the brief rundown of that was they attempted to open a brewery in Matthews. They were originally going to be Matthews Brewing Company. And I believe that's where the tree logo started from, was the kind of historic tree that was on the property of the location they were going there. And then that got shut down pretty hard. And we were, you know, at that town meeting when it got shut down pretty hard. So it was just interesting. And then they attempted to rent out a space in Plaza Midwood and lost that by an hour, which sucks. And at that time, they were trying to transition to be called Taproot Brewing, keep the same logo, and they missed out on the name of that very, on the line as well by a winery that was trying to expand into a brewery as well. And so they lost out on that name just shy of making that a reality. And so then finally they came around to Harrisburg, found a perfect location, wanted to be part of the community, and opened up Far Mill Brewing. And the rest is history. They opened on St. Patrick's Day of this year, so they're still very new. And really just want to get their name out there because, like I said, all their beers are great.
Yeah. And it was full circle for them, too, because they had met each other at UNCC.
Yep.
And now they're in Harrisburg, where they used to go to the Bojangles, they said.
Yeah, that was the only thing there.
That was there then. So it's pretty cool that it came back full circle to where they met. Yeah. Is, you know, they're kind of in that community. And
yeah, that was something, too, that Kevin had said.
2 minutes from campus.
When Austin said, hey, let's check out this building in Harrisburg. He was like, no. Like, one, obviously it's exhausting because they had been so close and missed so many times at that point. But two, you know, from their UNCC days, it was, there's a Bojangles. And so he was like, there's nothing here that, absolutely not. And then started doing more research and found out that in the last, 10 years, the median age dropped from 50s, general 50s to 30s, and the population had tripled. And so they took a ride up there, and he was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like this can work. And the building that they ended up being located in now was a 1950s old Winston Cup shop building. So it already had a lot of great history in the community there. It's a really great building. It's called a barrel roof?
Yeah, barrel roof. Had metal trusses instead of wood trusses. Had really large bricks. Like the bricks were a lot larger than they make nowadays. Yeah. So but it wasn't like cinder block size, but
right
in between.
Yeah, it was super fascinating. Yeah. And it's great unique. Because their entire their branding is all about community involvement and helping invest in the community and preserving the history of the community, which is also, hey, Matthews.
You missed out.
Yeah, you
they
missed
were
out.
Gonna do that.
Because they've done really well so far in Harrisburg with it. But so they named themselves after the Far Mill, which is one of the earlier development pieces of the town. And all of their materials they buy and sell as local as possible. All of their used grain they sell to the fire chief there for his cattle. Something that I thought was really cool was, I believe it was Kevin who said this. He said the building was already a brewery. Like when they came and checked it out, they could see, in the bones of the building. The building was already a brewery. The goal was to bring the brewery experience. And I just thought that was really great that, they could come in with those eyes, see it in the midst of all the rubble and chaos that this building was when it started, and really say, you know, we've got the foundation. Now let's bring the community and like invest in the community. And I just thought that was great. They talk about being kid indestructible, which I think Austin has more than enough reason to define that. That poor man has 2 sets of twins. And I say poor man. I'm sure he's a happy father, but I mean,
Yeah.
Most parents are stressed out by 1 set of twins, and they've got 2. So rock on to them and rock on mama, because and yeah, they're just looking to have a good community impact. And something they wanted to kind of pass on, I guess, is if you come in on a Monday or a Tuesday, those are their sort of designated brew days. And so if you get there early enough when they open, you'll still get this really great, rich aroma in the atmosphere that's not overpowering from their brewing days. And they were also just super thankful to have a lot of local mentors who helped build them up and get to really experience the brewery community for what it is. Because, I mean, everybody in this community started as a home brewer and then had to figure out the business aspect and how to really deal with all the nitty gritty of that. And so they had a lot of great mentors that helped build them up with it.
You saying home brewing remind me of something of like they were doing that in college. Mm-hmm. Which was, that seems, I mean,
yeah,
most people that started a brewery here are a little bit older than they are.
Yeah.
And started brewing. I mean, I don't know when they started, but when they talked about it, they were 30s.
Yeah.
It seems like most of them. And they were in college and started brewing and were home brewing before OMB was even in Charlotte.
Yep.
So they've been doing it a while.
And that, we kind of talked with them too a bit, is they've been open since St. Patrick's Day. Like, it's not been very long per se, but they've had all of that extended time to work through brewing and recipes and really perfect it. So for being so young business-wise, they've been at it for significantly longer than most, and it shows. Like, for such a baby brewery, their beers are excellent.
Yeah, knocking it out of the park already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as they're working toward getting their name out there and really investing in the community, something else that's cool is their physical location is right in between the road where the 4th of July parade goes and the park where they shoot off the fireworks. And so you can expect 4th of July, which I believe is going to be in 2 weeks, is going to be a big celebration. They're going to actually close off their parking lot, and they're going to close it, but then you can come bring chairs and have a really great spot to sit in between. They're going to have a bunch of food trucks, popsicles, the whole 9. It should just be a really, great beer. It should just be a really awesome experience, and definitely worth making the trip over there to give it a shot, because
yeah, from what I hear, the Harrisburg July 4th celebration is something you need to see anyways.
Oh, really?
So,
maybe we'll see you there.
2 stones with 1 bird.
You're an idiot. That was intentional, people. He is that big of an idiot, yes.
You can 2 stones with 1, two stones with 1 bird it, and get the Harrisburg 4th of July celebration and farm meal, off your list.
Well,
I mean, farm meal should be like a continuous on your list, but
it really should, though. Like, I'm excited to see where they go, because their beer is really good. We have every reason to be biased, but I think we've made it pretty clear of, even the things that we're closest to, we're ready to knock them down if they're not really living up to the potential they have. And they've exceeded my expectations, for sure.
Yep.
Cool. So, I guess we'll jump into Harrisburg.
Okie dokie.
So, I'm going to let you get your notes up and ready. But I got to say, from my end, Harrisburg, I struggled with a little bit, and then found some interesting information, and it was I very much felt like Matthews for a minute, and then swung pretty hard into Mooresville about it. In the sense of Matthews, it was super hard to find anything but like slight mentions here or there, but nothing dove deep. And then in Mooresville, it was very community oriented, and the community, you know, they made Facebook groups, they did all kinds of stuff to try to preserve the history. They had constant like call outs for history and bring us your photos, bring us your stories, help us preserve this. And it's a little less structured, it feels like, at least online it feels like, for Harrisburg, but I did at least go from feeling like I couldn't find enough information on anything to swinging pretty hard into community involvement to preserve it, even though it was not maybe expressed in the best way.
Yeah, it was definitely a...
but the heart is there.
Instead of like a government, like historical
Yes.
society that had like a well-developed page and easy to find stuff, which is what we'd want to see. It was very like
Joe
individual.
Schmo.
Individuals did their own thing.
Right.
And had
which is still
pictures and
encouraging.
stuff. Yeah.
It would be nice to see the town come together and like actually fund something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they do to a degree with like historical I was going to say reenactments, but like holding on to the historical sites and making them into small museums and that kind of stuff. But I would like to see that online too. But again, that goes back to the Matthews thing where being able to see enough of it online makes me want to go in person and see it. But if I can't even find it online, I'm not even going to bother, and because I wouldn't even know about it. And so it would then, it like alienates the next generation from being involved in that history. So it's just finding the way to bridge that gap. But tell us what you've got.
So my idea came from an individual in Harrisburg. I think her name was Janet, something like that. She was going to put a book together about Harrisburg. She used to write for the Harrisburg Horizons newspaper.
Well, okay.
Which lasted a whole grand 6 years,
Ooh.
I believe.
All right.
And so she had like a list of topics that she wrote about back in the day, but there were no links to the articles because that newspaper didn't exist. But luckily, what I did find, there was a date involved, which allowed me to look up neighboring newspapers, find those dates, and then do the articles from that.
Do some good sleuthing.
Yes.
That's kind of how I felt with it. It's there. It exists.
You had to work for it.
But yeah, you had to work for it. And unfortunately, we're part of a generation that won't work for it. And so that's what makes me nervous is bring the information as easy as possible so we can move on.
I had to take all my information from 2 newspaper articles. One was a Concord newspaper and one was a Wilson newspaper.
I mean, yeah. And also, if I looked over your shoulder properly, they were
pictures.
Pictures of old newspaper. Like, yeah.
So no copy and paste here.
Nope.
But we'll start off. I'll set the stage a little bit.
Do it.
It's April 11th, 1897.
Ooh. Okay.
A quiet Sunday morning
Oh.
in Harrisburg.
Little birds chirping.
Yep, everybody's
Spring
at church.
is springing. Ooh, yeah, okay.
Yep, early morning. 2 trains running behind schedule. Which I like trains, the idea of trains, but I do not like riding in trains because they are slower than advertised. And not as comfortable as one would be led to believe. Well, the number 11, a southbound passenger train, was due in Concord at 10:30. But they were 30 minutes late.
Okay.
The number 36, an express train heading northbound, was over an hour behind schedule, but they were supposed to be in Concord at 10:03.
I appreciate you setting the stage. I have suddenly feel like I just dove into a word problem in math class.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, whoa, wait, this is real life. All of a sudden, all the things that they told me I'd need in my future, and I said, that's crap and I won't need. I think I might need it.
Okay, so we got a train going south. Henceforth known as number of 11.
Yes. 11,
Heading
not to be
south.
confused with the girl from Stranger Things, is heading south.
Yep. In Concord, 30 minutes late. 11 o'clock.
Okay. 11 at 11.
Yep. They were supposed to be there at 10:30. So,
Yeah.
The 36 train heading north
Okay.
from Charlotte through Harrisburg, supposed to be at Concord. They were supposed to be there at 10:03. But they're over an hour late. So we got an issue,
A little bit.
right?
I presume we are on the same track.
Yes.
Okay.
It's probably the only track.
Yes.
So with that, they're like, okay, not a big deal. Harrisburg has a side track.
Fancy.
Okay, so since the express train is more late, we will give it right away.
You're proving your point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the number 11 was supposed to get to Harrisburg to the side track before 11:15
Yes.
because the express train was coming through Harrisburg at 11:15. The number 36 train gets to Harrisburg, does not see number 11 sitting on the side track.
Oh, no.
So they were told to wait. If, you
Right.
wait until it gets to the side track. But they had a clear symbol. I don't know what the symbols look like or what that means,
Right.
but they had the all clear,
Yep.
basically. So they just opened the throttle back up,
Oh, no.
and the number 11 is slowing down, getting ready to approach the side track.
Oh, no.
But they never made it.
I reckon so.
And so both crews, after, I think the number 36 northbound was going at like 45. Not sure the speed on the number 11, but they were slowing down. When they both saw their situation, because it was like immediately known after they blew through Harrisburg, it was like, oh,
crap.
there it is. Both trains slammed on brakes, and the engineers, or the crew who were in the front, they slammed on brakes and jumped off.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it sounds terrible, but also, what you gonna do?
And the two trains crashed together at exactly 11:15.
At what point will they meet?
Yes. A thunder-like crack.
11:15 is always the answer.
Yeah. A thunder-like crack could be heard for miles.
Ooh. Can you imagine being on an old school train, that head-on collision?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I don't know.
Carry on.
They weren't mile-long trains, though, luckily. The number 11 train, southbound, consisted of the engine, one mail car, one baggage car, first and second class coach cars, so 5 cars total.
Okay.
You don't even see just a 5-car train nowadays. Number 36 had 2 vegetable coaches.
Hey.
I think it's funny that they called them vegetable coaches. 2 mail coaches, a baggage car, and a first and second class coach, just like the other, and 2 sleepers. So
Okay.
9. When the engine struck, the southbound number 11 was knocked to the right of the track. I don't know who's right. Number 11's right, or number 36 is right.
To the right of the track. Oh.
Yeah, but depending on which way you're going, the right is a different side.
Okay.
But the northbound engine leapt up and over the southbound engine
Holy crap.
and plunged into the postal car of the southbound. The postal car from the southbound and the 2 vegetable cars from the northbound were splintered, and the newspaper said that you couldn't find a piece from either one of those cars that were bigger than your arm.
Yikes.
If you read these newspapers too, they explain things hilariously.
Yeah.
Not bigger than a human arm. Okay.
I mean, it was early on in the
They're
game.
both blunt with their stories, like just very like matter of factly telling you them, and then also giving you wild descriptions of things.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing. One of the mail cars from the 36, the northbound, was thrown onto an embankment and was found about 50 feet from the track. Train parts and vegetables were strewn in every direction. Pieces were being found as far as 75 yards away.
Oh, wow.
So
quite
a collision. One interesting thing I did find was there wasn't any note on what happened to the passenger cars. It says that all the passengers survived.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm shocked by that. That's great.
It actually said none were hurt, but were violently shaken up.
I mean, yeah.
But they didn't say, like, I'm assuming just they detached.
Yeah.
Kind of like just the torque of the vegetable car and the engine going up over the other engine may have like ripped it apart.
Yeah.
And so they kind of just like stayed where they were at.
Sure.
But
I could see
passengers all survived.
That's great.
Of the two trains, though, 4 people were killed. What?
You just said passengers all survived.
Yeah, passengers.
Okay, so crew members jumping out.
Well, not all the crew jumped out. Because there's like,
sorry, you just said everyone survived, but then 4 died.
All the passengers.
Okay, carry on.
The people who paid to get on there.
Okay, so I'll let you keep talking.
Did not die. Well, I'll tell you what. There's a bunch of crew for each one. So there's like the engineer, the conductor, there's the fireman, there is a like mail dude. They got like a name for him. Postal clerk.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of people who like they didn't even specify their job, but it's kind of they were
train peeps.
They were a crew member.
Sure, that's fine.
And I think the only people who jumped off were like the engineer.
Yeah,
like
the
people
very
who
first.
were in the very front that saw it coming. They threw on the brakes and bailed.
Which probably saved their lives if they weren't some of the 4 that died.
No. They were injured. But the 4 people were killed. The number 36 northbound fireman, Will Donaldson, he was found buried underneath the engine. Well, we'll give if you got small kids,
disclaimer,
this may be gory.
Graphic. I don't know
it's
what.
Not to me, but it may be.
I mean, yeah, I'm squeamish, and 2, I don't know who's letting young kids listen to us be idiots and to a beer podcast. But if it's happening,
well, you know, you never know.
Could
be listening to it in the car.
Away. That's fair. Anyway.
Well, they think their kids is watching SpongeBob in the back, but they can hear it up front.
Innocent ears, turn away.
Can
I turn away too?
Yes.
I'm squeamish.
He was found buried underneath his engine and the great pile of wreckage. His head was smashed and his body mangled. It was some time before an arm and other members of his body was found. They believe his death was instantaneous, though.
I hope, dear God.
Because he was, if you remember, number 36 was the one that went airborne.
Yep.
And so a fireman, I imagine he's putting fire.
Like coals in the, yeah.
So he was probably in the one that flew. Engineer Kenny, it doesn't specify which he was.
Which train he was on? Okay.
He was picked up from next to the engine, badly scarred, and suffered internal injuries from steam inhalation.
Oh. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. So I'm not the.
I mean, that sounds like you either like burned, suffocated, or like heated to explosion.
I believe he died a few days later because he wasn't mentioned in the initial newspaper report.
Gotcha.
They only had 3 deaths. But later he died from steam inhalation. So it probably took a few days for that. Titus Udi, he's one who they didn't specify his occupation. His his head was smashed and his body bruised and internal injuries.
Yikes.
He was actually placed in a hospital coach, so another train came up. When they heard about
Dumped all the other carts off? Like, how does that work?
Huh?
How do you...
Well, this train was sent from Charlotte when they heard about the wreck. So it was coming up there just for...
And then they, like, backtrack?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably. Back to
Because I was
Charlotte.
like, how are you going to dump...
Came from Charlotte and went back to Charlotte.
Okay.
He was actually placed in the hospital coach, but died before getting back to Charlotte.
Okay.
And then this is the worst one. The postal clerk of number 11. So he's the one who, like, the engine went flying into his car. Was found suspended by his legs between his car and the engine of train number 36. He was hanging upside down and was begging for the rescuers to cut his legs off to get him free.
No.
After an hour and a half, they finally freed him, but he died 15 minutes later.
Oh, God, that poor man.
Yeah. And
you have to suffer that long just to die immediately after freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So that's the 4 who died, which...
Why didn't you tell me to close my ears with the kids?
I know train number 36 had 96 passengers.
Okay.
So the fact that only 4 died...
I mean, yeah.
is quite amazing.
All around, considering the level of healthcare and the level of, like, just non-efficient parts and not as, like, clean parts and all that kind of stuff in the trains themselves that has the potential to be more catastrophic. All around, to me, that's impressive, regardless.
There were quite a lot of injuries with the crew, the remaining crew. Like, some others were pinned, but were freed and ended up surviving. So, like, all the crew had injuries of some sort. The number 11, I don't remember what his title was, but he had got off the number 11 train and was going down to switch the thing and was caught up in all the wreckage. And he like suffered some leg lacerations, but ended up being okay. And there's a lot of, like, steam injuries. But there was one injury. It wasn't so much the injury that I found interesting, but his story. The baggage master.
Okay.
Had a lot of baggage.
Dad jokes.
From number 36. He was found pinned between his car and the mail coach to the front. They say pinned, but I think it was loosely.
Okay.
Because...
like, just kind of trapped, not actually physically.
Couldn't get out.
Okay.
Because
I
they
feel
said
better about that.
Yeah, I thought the word pinned was pretty interesting. Like, was the wrong use.
Yeah.
He was extracted with great difficulty, but was not hurt.
Yeah.
So that seems like pinned was the wrong word, but
just, like, confined to a very small place and unable to get out.
Mr. Jerome, the baggage guy, told a reporter that this was his second narrow escape within the past few weeks.
Oh, God.
He was in a train wreck in Atlanta several weeks prior. So if you see Baggage Master Jerome on a train,
do not get on that train.
Don't get on that. But I thought
if you see Baggage Master Jerome on a train now, he's a ghost and get off that train.
Yeah.
Yikes.
There are heroic tales of the passengers, though. Apparently, once they got off and were, like, not in shock anymore, they created a water bucket brigade to help alleviate the pain from crew members that were pinned down and were getting, like, steamed on.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
not that they're getting steamed on.
Yeah.
That the people were able
Another interesting story from the passengers was there was a kid who was hanging out the window.
So close.
Yeah. Kid was hanging out the window like a dog, sounds like. Like half his body outside the window.
Yeah.
And,
you see a lot of historical pictures of, like, boats and trains and stuff with that kind of.
So he's hanging out and the train's hit and he gets thrown out, but it's fine.
I mean, that's incredible because, I mean, I know you had already told me that, no passengers were injured, but I immediately thought, and again, it's a speed thing, which is a technology thing and whatever, but immediately thought like severed,
Yeah.
like, oh,
No, he
right,
just got,
right
like-
down the middle.
He got thrown out and was fine. And his name was Lil Coot.
Good old little coot.
Yeah, Lil Coot. He was hanging out the window and
Got thrown a little
about up
little
on the bank there.
way down the road.
Yeah. He's about 12 feet. 12 feet up down the embankment. And he was fine, though. We told him to rub dirt on it, walk it off.
Yeah. We poured a little beer on it when they
Yeah.
got back to the house.
Yeah, one man, John Hill Carter, put out a fire that started in one of the mail cars. I imagine, I don't know which one. But they said it probably would have killed everyone who was pinned down.
I mean, yeah. Because the mail car, that's going to burn.
Yeah, and so they said, that was pretty spectacular. He went into the mail car that was on fire and put it out somehow. They didn't say how he put it out.
Get it,
They didn't
Holmes?
know. But so there was a hero there. The citizens of Harrisburg were praised in all the newspaper accounts
Yeah.
for helping to clear the wreckage. Engines pulled from both directions to clear the track. Debris removal continued throughout the night while another crew laid a temporary track around the wreck. And the track was in place by that night, about 11 o'clock, when the first train was able to finally move through.
That's impressive.
But, yeah, about 12 hours, it seems like.
I mean, that's impressive.
And so, yeah, that's why the citizens of Harrisburg were praised, because
Yeah.
they helped make that happen. One thing I found interesting, it's kind of like when you see a wreck on the interstate and there's a big pile up and everybody's slowing down to check it out.
Rubbernecking for
Yeah.
days.
They said about 1,000 people were at the wreckage within a few hours. Like, people came from neighboring towns and
That's impressive
Heard
because
the
I
news
imagine
and-
there's not a lot of people with easy transportation to make that trip.
And 1,000 people, another thing that I had down as an interesting detail makes me think that there weren't that many people in the area to begin with.
Sure.
I put on here maybe a testament to how small and secluded the area of Charlotte as a whole was at this point. But that train wreck didn't even make the Wikipedia's list of American railroad accidents.
Oh.
It's not even listed. They don't even know it happened.
Like the great bank robbery of Matthews.
Yeah. So,
Or Mr. Cornelius, who runs the town.
yeah. Dang, I can't remember his name. I should have wrote this down. But they talked about a bunch of rumors, like right away started flying about.
Always.
And one rumor was that this fella died on the train.
Okay. Like a
And-
passenger or
yeah.
okay.
I believe it's a passenger. And it says that was found not to be true by the man himself. Is like, hey, I didn't die.
Still here. I love that
they
kind
said
of
it was
stuff.
disputed by the man himself.
Yeah.
Like, nope, still alive, guys.
Yeah.
Like, right here.
It's like the Taron Egerton Robin Hood. Still kicking, guys.
Yeah. But it was like, they said, there were rumors going to town that so-and-so died, and it was only disputed by so-and-so.
Only.
the same dude.
He's the only one that disputed it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, nah, he's really dead, man.
I thought that
He's
was
like, no, I'm
hilarious.
alive. And they're like, no, you're dead. That's great.
But if you want to, I will link the Concord newspaper. Well, I'll do both. I'll link the Concord and the Wilson newspaper below. And you should read some of that stuff.
Just because of the interesting descriptions.
Yeah, just like how they just tell the news.
Yes.
They were just like matter of fact, and then like very bold like claims or descriptions, just like off the wall. They're just like, it's like such contrasting styles.
Yes. But in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
But check that out. I'll link it below. So a train wreck that, according to the rest of the world, didn't happen, happened here in Harrisburg. And it was very much a train, like railroad town,
Yes.
too. Like there was the 49, which is the big road now, but all of life happened
Right there,
a couple blocks away at the railroad track.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Cool. That's fun. I mean, that's not fun, but it's way more interesting of a story than what I have to tell you.
yeah.
So,
well, I had to work for
I hope,
it.
yeah, I was like, I hope all y'all enjoyed that because it's about to get a little snooze fest. My bad. Wah, wah. But, of course, I'm going to dive into just some real quick history of the Harrisburg. And then, really, it's not even so much a story as it is just continued information about the town.
Okay.
That's just a little bit more of a deep dive, but cool.
Cool.
Okay, so you got stuff in your glass then?
I feel like I do. It's just scratches, I guess.
Yeah. So for Harrisburg, it was settled originally in the early 1700s by the Scot-Irish folk. And again, I'm not really sure if we're being like politically correct by saying Scot-Irish because they don't really know the not like the difference, but like who was who at that time, or I don't really know. But, and then we had a gentleman named Robert Harris, and he was an established landowner. And he helped run the depot with the trains and all of that, and so it became known as Harris Depot. And then eventually it became known as Harrisburg when they brought in the first post office and became official in 1874.
Tell you, them post office, that's when it's real.
The interesting thing to me is that it became like an official town and had its post office in 1874. That's when it became Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. And then in 1973, so 99 years later, that's when it officially incorporated as a town. Like, that's recent. That's not our lifetime, but that's very near our lifetime. I just found that.
I wonder what it takes to be incorporated.
Right, I'm not quite sure what led to that. And I know Harrisburg is a small town, so maybe it was just kind of an outskirt and whatever, but I found that interesting that it took that long to become actually incorporated. It started out primarily agriculturally, farming, all that stuff, cotton mills, and then was built up a lot by the railroad. And kind of, you mentioned this briefly, Highway 49 came in, and that sort of put the railroads out of business in the area. And then the very first traffic light came into town in 1978.
No way.
Show did.
Guess you can't get traffic lights till you're incorporated.
I guess not. But something else I thought was interesting going with the post office theme is their current post office has sort of like a mini museum in it that has, just, it's not really a museum, but they have an exhibit.
Yeah.
So that's why I called it a mini museum. But they have a specific exhibit that's just trying to highlight the history. And like I said when we started the podcast, it was... officially speaking, there's very little highlighting the history online. I'm sure on the ground in Harrisburg, there's actually plenty of historical landmarks that have a lot of history there that's preserved, but online there's not really much until you start really scratching the surface, and then you get to, Joe Schmo from down the street who said, no, we're going to preserve our family's history, and then started collecting things from around town. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of Harrisburg in a nutshell.
Cool.
And probably not surprising to you, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the Far Mill itself, which our brewery is named after. And the biggest question I had, quite frankly, was if this far was related to the far from our, I almost said Belmont, from our Fremore West episode with Blue Blaze and the Grand Theater.
The FAR building.
Yes. The short answer is I would say no. As in, they are not the same person. However, I also feel like with this few people in the area, I would expect there to be some, even if it's a few relatives off, some sort of family connection. So nothing directly that I could find, but again, it's hard to come by some of that information. Yeah. So Samuel Farr was the guy who owned the building that later became the Grand Theater in Fremont West, or West End. And Hugh Smith Farr is the man who put together the Farr Mill in Harrisburg.
Okay.
So, give or take 1850, the Farr Mill was built. And there is actually, I've only found one, but there is one photo of the original Farr Mill. Because in 1910, there was a flood that washed it completely away.
Yeah.
Which, that sucks. But
the flood of 1910. Yeah, everybody knows about that, right?
Totally.
Everybody knows about it.
Okay. I was like, I'm a Yankee, so I really don't, but you telling me you don't know about that, you country boy?
Yeah. It should be called A Flood in 1910, not The Flood in 1910.
The Flood.
I've seen a lot of things recent since we've started this, but it's like the Great Bank Robbery, but it wasn't a bank robbery. And it's like the Flood in 1910, gotcha. And then there was the train wreck of 1897. That's not even on Wikipedia.
Yep.
You know, they try to make it. It's clickbait.
I mean,
old school clickbait.
You're not wrong. So, washed away in 1910. Had about a 60-year run. And then Paul Stallings.
Okay.
Should be a familiar name. The last name, at least. Stallings.
Oh, the town?
Sure. Town, road, lots of things.
Yeah.
He bought the land in 1888. So, it actually washed away on his time. Shame. And, well, it was bought by the Stallings family. I'm not sure if it was specifically him at that point. But in 1912, 2 years after the flood, he rebuilt the mill. And they do currently have a stone that's part of the structure that verifies that date. And it was used until 1933, primarily grinding corn, wheat, and livestock feed. And it actually had one of the first phone lines in the area, which I read through several historical building profiles, and there's one building that still stands with a switchboard and of the original 3, and so I'm not sure if they're considering this to be part of that, or if like the phone and switchboard were considered. I mean, they are two different things, but not quite sure how they categorized everything at that point. So we had 1912 with Paul Stallings, and then his son Joe primarily transitioned the 185 acres from cotton and cattle to cotton and grain, and it was actually still in active use until 1980.
Oh.
Right? Like, we were both very nearly on the scene at that point. And so then in 1980, they sold off a good bit of the land, and it started getting built up into a community called the River Hills Estate. And by 1981, it had the first home fully erected. The Stallings family then donated the 8-acre plot around the mill to Harrisburg to be made a historical site in 1998, after the River Hills Estate HOA started kind of vying for it to become a historical site the year prior. And so they eventually donated it and made it such. And there's a lot of photos, again, kind of from a Joe Schmo site that was trying to keep up with the history there. And so there's a lot of photos online that go up until 2009 of it slowly deteriorating and kind of crumbling, and then removing the heavy machinery and doing different things there. And so it looks like if you go into Google Maps and hop into that nice little 3D view, it looks as if they kind of let it deteriorate to whatever point and then rebuilt it from scratch to mimic what it was. And I'm not quite sure what the interior is in terms of reusing the same wood from it or just all these types of preservation. But it looks as if they have rebuilt it so that you can go visit it as a historical site, even after it had gotten dilapidated. But those records online only go until 2009. So, it's been a decade. But something that I thought was most interesting, I guess, is just... there you go.
Just go ahead and finish it.
Top her off there. Yeah, I mean, it looks thick, but it doesn't taste nearly as thick as it looks.
That's true.
But I think to me, it's just more interesting the way that Harrisburg collects its history, because it is this sort of weird in-between of the way Matthews does it, which is to say, hey, we've got it, but we're not going to tell you what it is. And the way Mooresville does it, where it's so community-driven and constantly reaching out to try to bring more in.
Yeah, I think they call that grassroots. So that would mean that Harrisburg is probably just roots.
Dad jokes, guys. Make it stop. You see what I have to deal with? This is why we drink beer on this podcast. It's all really a front, just so I can tolerate him while we talk about things.
Yeah,
And he gets to drink beer to tolerate my lackluster stories, because I'm not the internet spy that he is that can dive deep into...
I mean, I got skills.
If you ever need
a particular set of skills.
I mean, you really do. If you ever need an internet private eye who is not officially licensed and could get away with some more things than a licensed person could, pay him a couple bucks and he'll find something out good for you.
Oh, I think by a couple bucks,
I mean,
a couple hundred.
I mean, yeah, it's...
I don't come cheap.
Give him a call, shoot him an email, leave us a comment. We'll make something work for you. But... so the way they collect their history, yes, I was on their, I guess they're like municipal website, and they do have a short history there. It is surprisingly way more informative than the Wikipedia page for Harrisburg. I only say surprisingly because historically speaking, in season 1 here, 19 episodes deep, it's not been that way. I normally get more off of a Wikipedia page just as a starting point than I do from a municipal website or even a historic website. And Wikipedia had basically nothing, and their historic did have a good range. And I had to laugh because the top thing on their history was post office. And your theory is building.
Yeah.
And so you got a decent ground level understanding of all the things from the municipal website, and then from there it was went silent. While I was doing research, I actually had texted Drew and said, I think there's a conspiracy here that the Far Mill, so many people had mentioned it, and I found zero actual information on it. I was like, I think this is a big hoax that the town is just trying to let you know if you're in the know or not. You're a local if you know that it's not really a thing, but we're going to talk about it like it's a thing. But something you can do is find a nice little bit of history and an old photo, actually. It may actually be a drawing, not a photo, I forget. But
I feel like it was a photo.
It very well could be.
It was black and white, that's for sure.
But if you go visit the Far Mill Brewery, they do have a nice homage to their name on the wall, and they give a brief history of the mill and have some sort of visual representation with it. And like we said, they were just really about trying to preserve that history. So they did make sure to do so with their namesake on their wall in there.
Yeah. And that looks like what Harrisburg is going to have to do is just... its occupants are going to have to carry it on for them.
Right.
I mean, that's how most of them are, but seems like the community is
really
open
has
to
a
doing
passion
that.
for it, yeah. And that's what, yeah, most of my information came from. Sorry, homie, but a really outdated, bad website. At the time, it was probably great, but it's been a decade since he's updated it. And I get that. And I get, as, just a citizen trying to preserve the history, you don't want to spend money to really update it and all of that. So I get it. But also, what's the commitment level then? Or maybe even bring in like GoFundMe funding or like something silly to just take a little time to update it. But it does exist with a good bit of digging. And this guy had a full old website that had the Farm Mill actually had the least amount of information on it. Like, I clicked through every single link available he had there. And there were a lot of other historical buildings he was specifically calling out that had significantly more information about their...
Well, they were like family homes for the most part, right?
Yes, but there were also like post offices and just all kinds of stuff. And so...
Well, I think the post office was part of a house.
That was one, yeah.
Yeah. Because some of the things I saw like doubled as a home and as something else.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of it was too at that time. But there was like a web page specific, like there was sub pages on this guy's website. And so the one page was specifically a long list of historical places. And then you could click in to get a little more information. And then there were specific things called out additionally that you could click into, and it followed a whole like a whole process of, here's the earliest information we could find, and then the development and the redevelopment and the preservation and all of that going all the way through. And Farm Mill was by far the least filled out piece there. But again, that might have just been it hasn't really been updated for about a decade. And so those may have just had gone through more of the process during that time while he was still updating it. And then Farm Mill just didn't quite get to that point yet, and so all of that happened later, and so it wasn't added in. That might be it. But like you said, there were a lot of there was like one specific page that just kind of listed off dozens of historical homes that maybe weren't even considered historical landmarks, but he wanted to come in and he basically reached out to all of these specific families and got as many photos as possible, and then pulled in as much history and anecdotal stories, which was just really cool from all of these families, and captions that were written on the back of photographs, and just tried to pull all of this together. And so there was a lot of things, something that specifically stood out to me that I had to go back and do a little extra research that wasn't exactly related. One of the things that kept getting mentioned and then finally popped up in that full list was the Sloop House.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was like, what? It's
probably like Gray's daddy.
Gray Sloop from Mooresville. And so I did look, and it was Will Sloop was the owner of this house, and then had a store and pharmacy down the road. And I went back to Gray Sloop and his parentage. Neither of them were Will. So
his mama wasn't Will neither?
Nah.
Oh my goodness.
No.
They can't be related. If his mama wasn't Will.
No. But again, it's one of those small towns, and especially they're both a little more on the northern side, that I imagine there's some relation there, just not as direct as we would love it to be.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there was the Sloop home, and it was just like fun little anecdotes of the kids had to walk the cattle down the street to the pharmacy, and they would like crap in the streets, and people hated it because it was like stinking up their yards. Like, just that kind of anecdotal stuff is, adds that human touch into history, and I thought that was fun. But it went through a whole lot of things of post offices, churches, several homes that were built in the very early 1900s, and then more stories from those families. There were really old school street signs. There were, the first fire department. There was an old drink stand, repair shop similar to what Farm Mill Brewing is in now. I did look for that. Could not find information on that specifically. The potentially last standing steel bridge in Cabarrus County. Schools, and then a lot of history of phones and electric coming into the area. They talked a lot about who was like donating money to
they
help.
had to raise like a certain amount of money And they have a list of like who donated what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you had to commit so much money and have that. An old school GoFundMe. Like they could not bring electric in until they had this much money raised. And so everybody had to go around.
Crowdfunded from the community.
And something cool is on that website, he had the written out list of the names and the amount they pledged, like that they had handwritten and signed this like petition for. So that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then he had hand-drawn kind of layouts of the city of this is where the electric lines will run. This is where the railroad is. These like, so it's a lot of props to the dude who put it together because he did manage to collect a lot of great history, and we're going to link that below and everything too, so you can go check it out. You'll see the website is super outdated, and so that's what's frustrating. But I mean, it exists and it's findable, and so that's kind of my differentiation of. It's still annoying, and especially being like a creative web design company, it's hard to look at, but it exists. And
that's 90% of the battle that we've found doing this podcast is you know something may have happened, but you need to be able to find the information.
Right.
And it's not always that easy.
Right. And yes, absolutely. You want people to go to museums and to go to the locations and like feel and see and experience in person, but nobody knows what exists there if they don't first see it online these days. And you know, that's our shtick, but I am just super grateful that even as messy as it may be online, it does exist there. And I respect greatly the guy who went and found all of it and seems to still be reaching out to people to get that information.
Yeah, and I think there's enough there that we will have enough for whenever we do Percent Tap House.
Hey.
I think we'll be able to have some news stories about Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. For that.
Yeah.
If that's next season. Maybe third season, who knows?
Yeah, I was like, definitely not this season, because next week's the finale, y'all.
Yeah.
That's
and
nuts.
who is that?
Sweet Union.
That's Sweet Union.
Preview. We've never given one of those before.
Engine Trail.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah, we're usually not organized enough to be able to tell you what's next week. But for the last episode of the season.
Finally, hey, it's season 1, guys.
Hey, stick around for next week's episode. Not stick around, but come back for next week's episode. Sweet Union.
Hey.
Indian Trail. We'll tell you about that. We don't know what the stories are yet because we do that the day before or the morning of. But
either way, we're not telling each other what it is, so we wouldn't tell you yet. Sorry.
That's true. That's true. But we're gonna drink beer from Sweet Union. We do know that much.
Never been there. Driven right.
Probably an IPA or a pale ale.
Hey, maybe a stout or a porter. But let's be real. Depends on if they do full growlers or crowlers or what, too. Mm-hmm. Makes a difference. But thank you guys for listening, as always. Thank you, Harrisburg. Thank you, Farm Mill, for having us out and for taking the time to talk with us. That was really cheesy, but it's about to sound cheesy, but it was really something special for us to get a chance to talk to you through it. And 4th of July, 2 weeks away. Make sure you get out there. Go check out everything they've got going on there. Park your chair in their parking lot and enjoy the parade and the fireworks.
One thing we didn't say, they're going to be doing stuff the night of the 3rd, right?
Yes.
That's probably when the
3rd and a 4th.
That's probably when the
because I think it's a Wednesday, Thursday.
Or the fireworks.
Yeah.
I don't know. But 3rd, 4th.
Go check with them.
They're going to be doing some
check them out.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. It's genuinely worth the trip because the beer, even if it's a new brewery, the beer is experienced and it's good.
And a very unique building.
Yeah. It's a really great building.
So like, comment, subscribe. This week I'm going to do a shout out to all you Yankees.
Oh yeah?
If you ever wanted your family that are back up north to know what's like life is like down in the South,
oh no,
you could send them to our podcast
and
be like, listen to how this kid talks and listen to all these crazy stories about Lil Coot flying out the train.
Yeah, Lil Coot got great sloop.
Yeah, get them in on it. They might like history.
I mean, I moved down here for it.
Yeah, so tell them Like,
I will say, as a Yankee, it's a very interesting perspective. And I know I had like a emotional time with it a few episodes back about the history, but the way we learn history in the North is very different from the way you learn history in the South. And so for the Northerners, it's worthwhile to have a different perspective and to get a chance to hear it. I say from the source, realizing that's not me, but from him and from where we're able to get it, which is in the South directly.
yeah. So
check us
do
out,
that.
Yankee folk. If nothing else, you can make fun of him and be like, wow, what happened to that Northern girl who says y'all now and has a weird accent when she drinks more? Make fun of me. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
We'll see you all next week for the final episode of season 1.
Check you later.
Bye.